Gentlemen, Kelly Flanagan's here, a friend, a front row dad brother, a prolific writer. And as I was just talking to him about his reputation in our community prior to hitting record, a man who is deeply respected in the front row dad world for how he pours in and helps so many in the ways that we have allowed him, invited him, been blessed by him to do so. The story that I want to share before we get into who is Kelly as a man, as a family man, and also more about what he does professionally, is I want to tell you guys that he was our special guest at a retreat in Florida 6 years ago. And I was so deeply honored when he said yes to coming down to the Keys to meet with our what I think was about 30 guys at that event. And and then what took me by surprise was Kelly became a member of Front Row Dads. And that was like the greatest gift to our community, because what would then happen over the next 6 years, culminating in a return to the Keys, uh, and just this timeline that I looked at, I was like, holy cow, what happened over these years? It was both some scary at how fast that went,
Mm.
and also and there were so many milestones along the way. Of I went back and I was like, oh, this podcast with Kelly, and then he put out this book, and then guys in our community started going to his events and his True Companion stuff, and it was just, I went to a GoBundance event where you were, and there was all of this. And then the
Mm.
countless, and just remembering the countless posts of people remarking about the book Lovable and how much
Mm.
that meant to them. And then my very close friend, Tracy Osborne, talking to me relentlessly about the unhiding of Elijah Campbell and
Mm.
how that book landed with her.
Mm.
And and having you return, Kelly, to the Keys. By the way, for everybody else, it's Dr. Kelly. For me, I've been given permission to call him Kelly, but
Anybody can call me Kelly.
for
It's fine.
everybody else, it's Dr. Kelly. Gotta earn that right. You gotta earn
There you
that
go.
right, fellas.
There you go.
But anyway, it's there was so much joy in my heart thinking about all of it all at once, just this
Hmm.
flood of Dr. Kelly Flanagan impact within my world and in the world of our front row dads. And then it starts to mount like a snowball at the top of the hill. It builds momentum. People are helping each other with the concepts. I'm on people's podcasts talking about the ego castle, for years. And it's just Kelly is a great example of a lead domino and somebody who doesn't just give a fish, but teaches people to fish. And I really enjoy my time with Kelly also because he brings spirituality into my world in such a way that I can digest it.
Mm.
It's non-threatening. It gives me such permission to explore my fears and my traumas around it, and yet my desires around it. And whenever we are able to drop in, as we were just weeks ago in Florida for this retreat, I walked away filled up, enriched, inspired, as I always do. And not only for me, but I watched it happen for other people. There was a moment when Kelly and I and another front row dad brother, Tim, we were in front of the room unpacking our own views on boundaries and how they showed up in our lives. And man, I felt not only like I was able to host and give Kelly the mic, but I felt like a participant with a front row seat, as I
Mm.
always do when Kelly just starts sharing. So, guys, I'm thrilled about this conversation. There's a lot of things I want to get into today, but Kelly is really well known for. I mean, as a psychologist, he's really well known for his work with couples. He's really well known for his work in our community, I should say, about when it comes to emotions, when it comes to learning about ourselves. Lovable is a great example of this. Our purpose, our worthiness, our sense of belonging. So much of his work is rooted in the very nature of our work in Front Row Dads, which is looking within and then understanding when we look within and when we see ourselves fully, and then we can express ourselves fully, safely, that what we ultimately can become in our lives. And without going further into this, let's just get into this convo. Kelly, I love you. Thank you for making time today. This is going to be a lot of fun.
I love you too, man. And every time you introduce me, I'm terrified to open my mouth because it's not going to get any better than your introduction. So thank you.
Well, dude, it's such a joy to tell the truth. It's such a joy to tell
Yeah,
the truth about people
yeah,
that you love.
yeah.
And you're one of
Well,
those
and
people for me.
you go back to that first retreat that you had me speak at in 2018, and by the time I got up to speak, there was a sort of like you had me at hello sort of thing. Like I got to experience, I don't know how much, maybe was it a full day before I spoke or, but I got to experience these guys. And I just remember thinking over and over again, like, oh, here they are. Like, here
Mm,
they are. The guys I've been looking for and wondering, is there anyone else in the world like me that is just driven and ambitious and wants to make the world a better place, but doesn't want to do it at the expense of his kids and his wife? And I was like, oh, here they are. So y'all had me at hello. So thanks for keeping me around.
dude, let's talk a little bit about your family for a moment, just so people have a
Hmm.
peek into your heart and also what you do to put food on the table. I'd love to hear you kind of explain how you articulate your mission today. Um,
Mm,
so yeah, let's begin with family, whatever you want to
yeah.
share, and then your mission.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm married to a woman named Kelly, as many of the front row dads know. She's also a clinical psychologist. Name is spelled exactly the same way. We mess up airport security every time we go through it. They do double
They do
takes,
double takes. Dude, I get to see it,
like
man. I get
which
to
one of
see
you is the terrorist, sort of thing. And so yeah, we've been married now going on 23 years, and our oldest is 20. He told us in eighth grade that he had no interest in school whatsoever, and he was going to become a world famous comedian. And he is 20 years old, and he's after it. He was just admitted to the graduate school at the Second City Conservatory, and we're just so proud of him. And he's paying his own way in there in Chicago and figuring that out. And then we've got a 16-year-old son and a 14-year-old daughter, who it's just such a blessing to like your kids. I really like them.
Mm,
They're really cool human beings, and I like spending time with them. And more, my wounds and my neuroses and all of my inner stuff is sort of settling down a little bit, so I can actually enjoy being with them. I think there's a part of me that wishes that could have happened sooner, so that my oldest Aiden could have gotten to enjoy him in that way too. But then again, he probably he probably didn't want any of that, knowing Aiden. See, he wanted to get out and about. So, anyways, just I'm just loving being with the family right now, and trying to stay centered in that and not get too off kilter.
love that. And let's talk about your purpose here through your
Mm,
professional work. How do you
yeah,
articulate to people what you're up to these days?
yeah. I've always wrestled with that, to be honest with you, because I'm known as the relationship guy. I'm known as the marriage guy. That's what I'm a PhD. I specialized in marital conflict and treatment of marital conflict. I started out as a couples therapist. I started a clinical psychology practice and employed several therapists who we treated couples. And so, and yet, most of my focus is on the inner journey, and I had a hard time. I've had a hard time for a while reconciling those two, but I do think that I'm growing in my awareness that I think one of the ways I bring a unique perspective is that most of the working out of relationship problems is actually an internal process that happens within each person, and that's the sort of unique perspective I bring is ownership for my inner world, and then showing up open heartedly with what I've sorted out in there. And when two people can do that, magic can happen. But when we're totally focused on fixing this thing happening between us, or me getting this thing from you so that it can feel okay in here, like we're bogged down forever in that process. But take ownership for your stuff, sort it out, and you'll really be able to care for the other person. So that's more and more. I think that's a focus of my mission. On my Substack, which I call Humaning, the tagline is helping kind people navigate the complexities of human connection. Because I just sort of discover that I have this good fortune of attracting kind people to my work, and they're thoughtful, tender-hearted, big-hearted people who are just like, man, relationships are complicated. Can you simplify it for us? And I'm like, that's what we're doing here. Let's sort it
Mm.
out and simplify it. So that's what I'm excited about, is simplifying the complexity down to a moment or two that happens in relationships that matter more than 99% of the other moments.
Yeah, and again, man, the couples that I know that have worked with you have had nothing but amazing things to say, and that's not always what I hear
Mm,
about marriage coaches. I'm wondering, what do you think is your secret sauce? Maybe you just revealed it. Maybe your whole point is that I help people to do the inside work and then bring that to their marriage. But is there a way that you've kind of identified, hey, this is what makes me unique or different? Is it how you
yeah,
listen? Is it,
yeah.
what do you think it is at this point? And I'm asking you to brag on yourself a little bit. I know maybe this maybe this is uncomfortable.
um, yeah, it's man. Um, I've I guess there probably is some I tend to be able to the yeah, you have made me uncomfortable. I clearly when I'm at a loss for words. Uh I think part of it is that I understand that the worst in people is just the most protective thing in people. That
Mm.
when we're at our worst, we're just protecting ourselves. And so I don't really get too concerned with some of those uglier things that can come up in relationships and in communication and conflict. Because when you see it, you see the protection, you go, well, just tell me about the pain that you're protecting right now. And all of a sudden we're all more human and have more in common. Um, and so creating a safe space to have those conversations, I think, is probably something that I'm good at. Um, I think one of the things when you come to couples work that is so overwhelming is it feels like there are dozens of things, dozens of problems to fix. Just dozens of things. Like we have this argument and this situation goes wrong and we can't agree on finances or how to parent. I mean, it just feels totally overwhelming. And one of the things I do really early on in my work with all couples is we identify that one moment that is repeating itself over and over and over again in each of those situations or each of those conversations. And it's the moment that your heart closes. It's the moment that, and you can feel this in your body, right? It's that moment where you feel the closing starting to happen in you. And we begin to discover that there's really only one, maybe two dynamics happening in the relationship that triggers that closing of your heart, and that all of your growth as a couple and all of your growth as an individual is going to happen when we isolate that moment and dig deeply into that moment and try to understand more what's happening there. And so I think there's a way to simplify it quickly, to start to make it feel manageable and doable. Solvable is not a word I love, but sort of solvable. And if you can get that sense of hope and that sense of clarity of direction working with couples and with a marriage, I think you're off and running. And so it's fun to see that happen pretty quickly for couples.
And this this sparks a few things for me. Um, One is I don't remember where I heard it. I could have heard it from you, but it was somebody who talked about this, like when did you stop dancing? When did you stop
Mm,
singing? Can you
hmm
remember the time you stopped dancing and singing? And I feel like it was almost like something that was pulled from like an indigenous tribe, and that's how they
hmm
were trying to work through problems within this tribe. But again, I'm just grasping it wherever I might have heard that from. But I love that idea of looking back and asking the where was the earliest memory,
hmm
um, and and so what comes up for me is like thinking about as a child, like when did my heart start to close,
Yeah, that's
um,
right. That's right.
and and I've been doing that a lot lately when I hear people even talking about um, problems that they have. I'm training myself to immediately think what was the earliest moment in their life
Mm,
that there was a belief that was created that's still affecting their world today.
that's
um,
right.
and ultimately, I know that's not exactly what you're saying, but but recognizing in a relationship what you just said was so brilliant. Like, tell me about the pain that you're protecting.
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
know, and
Yeah.
the moment the heart closes, because what would be possible if I were to attune myself in such a way that I knew my partner, that I could feel it the moment
Hmm.
their heart closed, or my
Hmm.
child, or somebody on my team, my with my
Hmm.
professional work, or even within myself, can I notice when my heart closes?
That's right. Yeah.
That awareness seems incredibly useful. The next
Oh.
question would be a logical one, which is, all right, what do we do? Maybe let's look at ourselves first. Like, how have you, and maybe you can speak to your own
Hmm.
experience in this, how have you been able to notice when your heart closes? And
Hmm.
then what do you do once that occurs?
Yeah. Well, I think you're right on, in recognizing that when our heart closes, it's not closing as an isolated one-off moment. It's tied to all the other moments that have felt like it, in which our heart closed, going all the way back to that first one or those early ones,
Yeah.
right? And so you start to see a theme, and that can really loosen things up for a couple too. I mean, because a lot of times the story is, I was all good until you came around. Um,
Right.
and in reality, what we realize is that falling in love is that our heart opened up completely to somebody. That's what falling in love is. And we give them a little bit too much credit for that. We go, oh, you made me this thing happen. And in reality, what it was is, for a while you felt safe enough for your heart to open up again, like went back when you were a kid, right?
Mm,
But then life happens and relationship happens, and they become a little bit less safe, and we start to close our hearts to them, and we say, now I'm falling out of, I still love you, but I'm not in love with you. And so it's really just the sort of circularity of the opening and closing of our heart that we're describing when we talk about love in that way. So I think there's a lot of wisdom in that, that it didn't start with this person, and tracing it back can help us to sort of join together around the issue of, like, wow, how can I show up in a way to help be part of healing something that goes all the way back to the beginning for you.
mm,
um, and so that becomes a joint project rather than a fix my partner project. The the question of, I get so excited about the idea of helping people increase their capacity to notice their heart closing sooner, because the reality is, the earlier you can see it, the easier it is to keep it open, right? Like, we all know how that feels when your heart's closed completely. You might need days to get it back open. So if you can notice it starting to close, you've restored to yourself a sense of choice. Like, ooh, I feel it closing. Do I want to go there? Does this ever serve me? What would it be like instead? Why am I closing right now? You just get all sorts of freedom to start to play with that moment. But you have to notice it really early. And the reality is by the time you're doing something with a closed heart, or saying something with a closed heart, it's probably too late. You have to feel the closing of your heart in your body to give yourself enough warning, um, to have a choice about it. Basically, it's a lot of it is body awareness and body work. And when I say body, I mean, like, waist to temples. Like, there's no one ever said, I felt my heart close and my toes cramped. Like, it's not involved. It's in those energy centers, waist to the temples. Can I tell you one of my favorite scientific studies,
yeah, man.
in relation to this? So,
Let's
and I
let
get
let's
so
get our left brain people looped
yeah.
in here.
Okay, you ready, left brain people? This is what I get excited about. So the question is, okay, so I start to use my body to notice my heart closing. Like, how much more warning do I get that my heart's closing? Like, how much more choice do I get? So, group of scientists at the University of Iowa, they bring participants into the laboratory, and they give them two decks of cards, a red deck and a blue deck. And the cards have monetary rewards and penalties on them. And they say, you're going to flip cards randomly, and if at the end you have a plus, we'll pay you. And if at the end you have a negative, you're going to have to pay us. What they don't tell the participants is that the red cards are rigged. So the red cards have really big rewards, but even bigger penalties. So if you only flip red cards, you're going to end up in debt. The blue cards have smaller rewards, but even smaller penalties. So if you only flipped blue cards, you're going to end up with a little bit of money. They don't tell them this. Then they hook them up to biofeedback equipment that tells the researchers how much their palms are sweating. Okay. And they observe the behavior of the participants as they flip cards. Okay, so here's the results. After 50 flips, the average participant can consciously say, oh, the red cards are bad. I'm not going to pick red cards anymore. I'm only going to pick blue cards from now on after 50 cards. Unconsciously, after 10 cards, their palms start sweating and they quit picking the red cards as frequently.
Mm.
It takes them 40 more cards to realize their heart is closing to the red cards and that they're starting to behave differently.
Wow.
80% more warning. If you
Wow.
can tune into your bodily sensations and go, ooh, something just stopped feeling safe and good and okay here to me. That's a lot of extra time to start making decisions about whether or not you want to close your heart. So I just get super. This is one of the first things we do with couples is we start to use the body and our what is technically our eighth sense, which is interoception. So our first five senses, our senses they're all directed outward, right? Sight, sound, touch, and all of that. Our sixth sense is basically balance. Our seventh sense is our sense of ourself in space. It's like what allows me to touch my nose with my eyes closed because I know where my nose and my finger are at. The eighth sense is interoception. It's the only one that is directed inward. When I ask you how badly do you have to go to the bathroom, you're
Mm.
using interoception. When you say I think I'm hungry, interoception. You can actually harness that capacity, that innate sensory capacity, to tune into your body and notice 80% sooner that your heart's closing and have 80% more opportunity to choose to keep it open to your people. I get so excited about that. You can tell.
Can you give me a practical example of how this shows up in your life? Like a moment where you might feel your heart closing. Um, yeah, I mean, pull from something recently if you can, but I'm wondering, and if you also want to use somebody else, that's fine, but like a real life example and then a choice that was made differently as a result of it, or what you felt and how it
Yeah,
showed up for you.
sure. So you'd asked a little bit about like what's paying the bills right now. So about a year and a half ago, I closed that clinical practice and I shifted all into online coaching of entrepreneurs and their spouses oftentimes. And and what that allowed me to do is on a Tuesday afternoon, instead of being 75 miles away managing my practice, it allowed me to be home, ending my day on time so I can be there for dinner with my family. So it's about 6 months after I've made this transition, and it's a Tuesday afternoon, and the day cancels. And I have the old thought of like, well, there's a dozen people who would like to meet with you today. See if one of them can slot in. And then I think, no, I'm gonna stick with my values. I'm gonna serve the family with this free time. So I call up my wife who's at work and I say, hey, I just had a cancellation. I know you were going to have to leave work early to take Quinn to soccer practice, but I'm happy to do it. And she's like, gushes, right? She's like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I got behind. I had to hospitalize a kid today. And I'm like, no worries. And I'm feeling pretty good about myself, right? Like, real good. So take him to practice, pull back in the driveway. She's getting home. I'm like, hey, I got some notes to wrap up. I know you've got some stuff. You want me to like pour us a glass of wine and we'll just enjoy this evening? And on the back, they talk, oh, she's gushing, like, oh, you're amazing. Yeah, I'm like, I know, I'm pretty impressive. Hour later, it's time to pick him up from practice. I'm like, hey, dude, or hey, babe, you've got. Sorry, I got distracted by my watch. I hate this thing. Um, babe, hey, go ahead. You've got dinner to make. I know you're gonna go get Quinn. I'll go get him from practice. She gushes again. I'm like on top of the world. Like I've figured it out. Right. Get home. Quinn gets in the shower. Caitlin's in her room. I sit down at the kitchen island. This is right before Elijah Campbell came out, and I said, "Hey, babe, I got a question about the book launch." And she looks at me. She goes, "Do you ever quit working?" And boom, like, you
Oh,
know what I'm
yeah.
talking about? Like,
Yeah.
I'm so proud of myself. On a typical
Oh,
Tuesday night, I would have
oh.
been 75. Everything I just did to earn your love and approval, and you,
Oh,
what the? And so, like, now at this point, I'm two and a
oh.
half years into practicing. My New Year's resolution going into 2021 was I'm going to moment to moment, I'm going to be aware of my heart closing and I'm going to open it as frequently as I can. So
I
I
remember that, by
feel
the
it.
way.
Remember that one?
I
Yeah.
remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This has become my core spiritual relational discipline. And so like, I think of it as like two steel security doors just slamming shut and there's a siren going, woo, woo,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
right. And I caught myself and I could feel all the things that I want to say. Right. She's unpleasable. It'll never be enough for her. She's a bottomless well of need. all the things. Look at what I did this afternoon. I mean, just all the things. And but I caught myself soon enough, and I'm like, I'm gonna go to the other room. I was literally triggering. I'm gonna go to the other room. I'm gonna lay down, take a couple deep breaths. I'm gonna come back when I feel like I can be as open hearted as you deserve. She just sort of rolls her eyes at me. I go to the other room. I think like I'm gonna be back by the time the beans are done boiling, and it took me 2 days, John. It took me
Yeah.
2 days to to because like I'd start to get there, and then I'd hear her in my
Yeah.
head say it again, like, "Do
Oh,
you ever quit
yeah.
working?" And it would just trigger again. I'd close again, and and it took me 2 days to get open, and there wasn't a whole lot to say at the end of that 2 days. I'll be honest with you. There was a lot more awareness about how I'm sort of still trying to use my wife to get that attaboy approval I've been wanting for my whole life, and I get out of whack because I go looking for that everywhere else in the world. And we have a deal that now that I'm not looking for it everywhere else in the world, you're going to give it to me right when I need it, right when I want it. Like, turns out we don't have that deal. So, but that's huge because can I give you one? I could give you all sorts of examples. Um,
I think the examples are really helpful, by the way. In fact,
yeah.
for me, sometimes they're the most helpful. I can really see
Mm,
myself in your shoes or in my own shoes, just under the same premise. So it's actually
yeah.
the way I love to learn, man. So share as
Yeah.
many as you want. Let's go.
Yeah. So I'm going to give you an example of just the other day when uh, I was able to open my heart to myself in the nick of time. Um, so I come up the stairs from working out in the morning. There's a big Amazon box on the kitchen table, and I look at it and I say, "Oh, I pulled into the driveway 3 times and saw that box and never brought it in yesterday. I must be really busy right now." I say that, and then I have a thought in my head that is actually, you're not busy, you're selfish. You knew that you didn't order anything, so you can give a rip about bringing that box in,
Mm,
right? Now, this is a moment where I'll start to close to myself. What's wrong with me that I'm so
mm,
selfish, so on and so forth. I was actually able to open my heart to myself and go, you can be a little selfish at times, and that's okay. Like, you're still okay. You're still
mm.
lovable. Not the worst thing in the world. Keep working on it. Like, I just had that just almost instantaneously. And it's a good thing it happened instantaneously, because as soon as the words were out of my mouth, my wife said, "You aren't busy. You're just selfish. You knew you didn't order anything. And so there was no reason for you to get it." And because I'd already opened up my heart to my own
Yeah.
selfishness, I didn't have to defend it.
Yeah.
Because what's going to happen in that situation almost every time is I'm going to go, "You don't appreciate how busy I am. You don't realize what I do for the family." I'm going to defend myself because I've already closed to that selfish part of me. So ironically, by opening up to that part of me, accepting it, when she calls me out on it, I'm able to go, this is true. You're
Mm.
exactly right. And then what was really funny was she opened the box, and a book I'd been waiting for 2 months that I'd pre-ordered 2 months ago.
Was in there?
It's in the box. Of course it is, right? And she's like, "Huh, it doesn't
Good.
pay, does it?" And it's like, "Yeah, I know, right?"
When you
So,
brought up
anyways,
the
those, yeah,
Yeah, when you bring up opening your heart to yourself, I immediately link this to something that I'm facing right now, which is
mm,
my blood work. I'll connect the dots here. This is going to sound random, but my blood work has been progressively getting worse over the years. My A1C numbers going up, my inflammation markers are going up, and increasingly concerning.
mm,
And I, I'm doing all the things that
yeah,
I'm investing big time, energy,
mm,
money, everything I can to see what I can do to move these markers. But this, one of my new health advisors, doctors, um, I'm not sure what to call him, but I consider this guy like a real genius in the health space. And he said to me, "Yeah, Jon, we can throw all these things at what's going on. We could do the
mm,
peptides and the plasma and the stem cells and all sorts of things we can experiment with. But unless you dial in these couple of things that sound like they're really adding a lot of stress to your personal life, these other things may not actually do the trick." Like, I think the
Mm,
root of your physical health is your these concerns that you have. And specifically, and I've talked openly about it, like in my marriage, like working
mhm,
through within my marriage. I'm wondering, and
mhm,
I wanted to give that context because my question is, in your research about open-heartedness and softening to yourself and being compassionate
mhm,
to yourself, have you stumbled upon or found any correlation to somebody's, physical health or longevity? I mean, I know there's, what is that, the Framingham study or whatever, that
mhm,
basically said that our relationships are the most important. And I know that the blue zone studies around the world kind of lean on relationships being a big part of our longevity or our health. I'm just wondering what you might have seen, and are there links to this, because I feel it right now that being
mm,
open-hearted is a key to my own personal healing. Any thoughts
yeah,
around that?
yeah. I mean, I think in a sense, close-heartedness, the nervous system correlate of that is our nervous system being in fight or flight mode,
Yeah.
like feeling under threat. Like that's what we're feeling in our body is our nervous system kicking in, going into fight or flight. Um, I'll I'll joke with a client who's like his wife will, complain about him lifting up the toilet and his heart, or leaving the toilet seat up, right? And his heart is closing to her, and she's saying that. And I'll joke, do you realize like your wife just said that you leave the toilet seat up and your nervous system is doing what it's designed to do if it's being threatened by like a grizzly bear in the forest. Like that's the reaction that your body is having. And so I think when our hearts are closing, our nervous system is activating, and we know there are all sorts of chronic health problems that come from a chronically activated nervous system.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think there is an argument for that to be made. I also think like the blue zones research that we now have, you're I wouldn't say relationships are important. I'd say safe relationships are important, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
if there's anything our people can do to give us an assist in opening our hearts is to feel like a safe space. Because that's if you're safe, I don't feel under threat. My nervous system isn't activated, and I can open my heart and be myself. Um, and uh, and so yeah, I think and this is the dance of interdependence. Honestly, like okay, so my people need to be safe for me so I can open my heart. Actually, no, that's ultimately up to you because there's plenty of people who are with safe people and still can't open their hearts,
Yeah.
right? Because ultimately that's an inside choice and an inside job. But there is an interplay going on for sure. Um, and so um, we ironically we grow in our capacity to be a safe space for our people by learning how to be open-hearted, right? Open-hearted people are safe people, and so there's a sort of synergy that can happen in relationships as both people are sort of giving themselves to the practice of open-heartedness.
I want to remain open to Tatiana, and I can feel myself closing down even in the last couple of weeks. There have been moments when I for sure my heart closed. Very hard to access empathy and compassion from a closed heart for me.
Mm,
And what happens in my situation is right now I'm trying to take space in order to regulate my nervous system so that when I do come back, I'm more compassionate, more
mm,
empathetic. Our challenge is that my need is to take space to heal myself, to come back to the relationship open hearted.
mm,
And she processes any type of space as abandonment. That's
sure.
her core
Yeah.
wound.
Yeah.
How have you noticed people successfully within your practice and your work within counseling? Is it just that I need to do what I need to do, Kelly, to go do that, and she needs to work with whatever comes up for her, and that's her work? My work is to honor the space, or is there something else that I might consider doing that? Because I'm not trying to hero her or like solve it for her, or
Hmm.
do her push-ups for her, because I think there is work that she needs to do. But I'm definitely not. I've checked in and I go, I don't think I'm really trying to hurt her. I know there's a
Mm,
vengeful side of Jon Vroman. I know there's like a time when I'm like, I'm gonna give it right back to you. I
yeah.
know that
Yeah.
exists for
Yeah.
sure. But most of the time now, it doesn't feel like that. I'm not
Mm,
walking away with my middle finger in the
hmm.
car. I'm
That's
just
right.
going, I really do need to take care of myself. And I really do hope she heals in her own unique way, but it's no doubt triggering to her abandonment wound.
Sure. Yeah. Well, going back to the story about me sitting at the island and Kelly asking if I ever quit working, um, it was 48 hours. And I had to be careful near the beginning of that 48 hours when I realized this isn't going to resolve itself, quickly, to text her and say, "Hey, I want you to know, like, I'm I'm more distant, but it's not like to punish you. It's not to make you feel abandoned. It's just because I'm needing some space to get open and to return to you the way that I
Yeah.
need to." Um, and I think that is our responsibility,
Do you ever get
right?
so closed though that you can't even send that message? Is there a part of
Oh
Kelly
yeah.
that's like,
Oh,
dude, I know I'm supposed to send that message, but I don't have
oh
it in me to even
yeah.
send it?
Of 100%. Yeah, I
Okay.
don't. I can tell you failure stories too, for sure. Yeah, no. N- the, Theoretically, the goal is to grow our awareness so that we can become aware just in the nick of time to send a message like that. But it
Yeah.
doesn't always happen, um, and that's fine. You learn a lot when your heart's closed all the way. If you're treating it as a learning experience. Um, but that theoretically, that's when we do have to take some space in order to manage our own stuff. That's theoretically what we want to do. We want
Yeah.
to be able to give that basically reassure the attachment. This is not an attempt for me to aggravate or sever our attachment. It's an attempt. It's a need for me to take care of myself. And then the person on the other end of that who might be insecurely attached, right? Who needs that sort of closeness to feel safe, is now sort of involuntarily plunged into their own work, right? And I think that's the hard part, is it feels like they're involuntary. So if you've been abandoned, that feels like being involuntarily plunged into your own work, right? And so it can
Mm,
feel like a reenactment of that. Um, but I don't. But the alternative, which is to not take the space you need when you sincerely need it, actually just can. It doesn't actually uh, sort of solve the abandonment issues. It just puts them off for a day,
yeah.
right? And so I think that's the reality, is we try to approach those separations in the most open-hearted way that we can, and recognize that we're both going to be doing a lot of work in the midst of that. If that makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
Kelly, I want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about humaning because I'm really interested in this project, and that I'm careful not to have like this huge, like abrupt pivot into a different conversation. I love where we are with the open heart. I love what we're talking about. I have 100 more questions on that subject and tons of stories of my own and all of it. But I'd love to ask you the question about this writing that you're doing weekly.
Hmm.
And maybe it's in the same vein of where we are now,
Hmm.
but it also is okay if we introduce something else. What are you writing about right now that's just lighting you up? What have you written recently that you're so proud of to put the piece out into the world, or that people have reacted to, or that just
Mm.
gave you the biggest, hit of joy because you were able to work on it? I mean, weekly writing
Mm.
is no small task. So I'm really curious what that's like for you, and what
Yeah.
you'd be willing to share.
Yeah. So those listeners who aren't familiar with what Substack is, it's a platform primarily for writers to share longer form content that's going extinct everywhere else in the world, right? And to build communities behind essentially a paywall. So you can subscribe for free to Humaning, or you can pay, like, I think it's like $4 a month, like nothing, to join the paid community. And I am really excited about the community. We will be meeting this Friday for a human hour. We call it the Human Hour. It's a Zoom conversation. I do about 30 minutes of teaching, and then we have 30 minutes of Q&A and conversation. It's a really cool community of people. This month's topic is finding and following your purpose. But as always, there will be wrinkles in that, right? It's more about intuition than vision. It's more about passion than ambition. It's more about people than projects, like sort of heart-centered purpose in a sense. So I really love what's happening there with those conversations. Probably my most well-read recent post This is a great story. So we moved out of the suburbs 9 years ago to the middle of nowhere. And for 9 years, I've made sure that there's always a jar of Trader Joe's peanut butter in our pantry. 9 years, there's never been an interruption in the supply chain. COVID, the whole thing, right? So a couple months ago, like we're on our last jar of peanut butter, and we don't have any time to head into the suburbs to make a Trader Joe's run. And I'm like, it's over. Like maybe I'm over. I mean, if I were to prep for, the whole thing to be over, it would just be walls of peanut butter. I love it so much, and I can't stand any other peanut butter. So it's a Saturday morning.
Here's it. Wait, hold on. Important. Creamy, chunk, like crunchy. Okay.
Yes, creamy, salted. And at Trader Joe's, you don't have to say anything else because they don't add sugars or, they're all natural. So yeah,
That's
creamy,
fair.
salted. Oh man, it's the orange label. My wife is so embarrassed to go to Trader Joe's with me because I'll clear it out, man. I'll take a dozen of them. That's where I'm at my most selfish. So, so I'm sitting there on a Saturday morning, like it's over the 9 year run, and I get a text from a high school friend I haven't talked to in a couple of years, and he says, "Hey Kelly, I'm in the suburbs for one of my daughter's volleyball games, and we just passed a Trader Joe's. And I know you love their peanut butter, so I stopped in and I got you a jar, and I'll leave it in your
No.
mailbox when we get home."
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Dude, that's awesome.
Um, and in that post, I also shared a story about I was in a coaching appointment. I was sitting along the river in our hometown. I shared the story on Ali's podcast, and um, I was trying to listen to him talk, but there was a bald eagle across the river that was flying back and forth in like a 50-yard radius. And I was getting distracted by it. What's it doing? It's not hunting. I don't really. And I say, "Hey, I'm distracted. This is happening." He says, "Well, let's just watch it for a while. Like, let's see what's in it for you." So I watched this bald eagle go back and forth for a while. All of a sudden, it just sticks its wings straight out. It starts to spiral, sort of upward, just never flapping its wings once until it's almost out of sight. It's so high, right? And so I say to Marv, my coach, and explain what happened. He goes, "Oh, that's the message for you. You think you've got to flap all up and down the river, right, to get where you're wanting to go, and the eagle knows there's an updraft here. And if it can just be present enough to this moment, it'll find the updraft and it'll go higher than it ever could underneath its own, power." And and so I talk in that post about how that moment with the peanut butter was like an updraft for me. Like
Mhm.
there's more going on here than meets the eye.
Dude, I
The
see a future
universe.
book title. I see
The
Updraft hanging on the wall
updraft,
behind you.
the updraft, man. They're everywhere. So that was the message of the post. These updrafts are everywhere. Yeah, I think it's actually. I pulled on another piece of writing about an author who was sitting on the side of the road, distraught about his daughter's anorexia, and a car, middle of a country road, and a car comes by, and the license plate is trust,
Mm.
just trust. And it turns out it was like a banker basically. But the banker read the story later and brought him the license plate, and now it hangs up in his office. And he said
No
it's the
way.
holiest relic I've ever seen. So well, keep your eye out for holy relics was the theme of the post. It's just these small off drafts that are just saying, "Hey, you're not alone. I've got you. We're gonna be okay. Like if you can just trust and lean into the updraft, like we'll get further than all this crazy flapping that you're trying to do." So that's the kind of stuff I love. I mean, it was just a random post on a random Wednesday, but I hope it nourishes people and centers us. So
Dude,
enjoying that.
holy relics. That's really, I love that.
Holy relics. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful. Um, and then Kelly, I want to talk also a little bit, at least for a couple minutes here, about your work that you've been generously contributing to the Front Row Dads community. And
Yeah.
I think we have time for this. Yeah. We have good.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Then delete something I said earlier if we don't, because this is fun stuff. I'm serious.
Um, So I'll give context for anybody listening so they understand what we're talking about. So in Front Row Dads, we have 6 pillars. The obvious ones, of course, are parenting and marriage. And then there's other pillars that we feel are crucial to a man thriving at home and in his business. So there is business in Front Row Dads. There is health in Front Row Dads. emotional intelligence, and ultimately the wealth that we create in all forms and the legacy that we create in our lives. So these are our 6 pillars. Kel and our team voted, and well, I should say we invite a person from within our community to lead the pillar for 2 months. And this would be somebody that has a great deal of expertise in the subject matter. They are highly respected in our community. We would be thrilled for their involvement. And Kelly is our pillar partner, we call them, for Front Row Dads in the Thriving Marriage Pillar. And first of all, Kelly, thank you so much for that, man. It's no small task. It's a huge undertaking. It's a generous contribution of your time and your wisdom to the Front Row Dads community. So thank you so much.
You
And
bet.
um, it's so funny. It's like they were like, Kelly's gonna do it, and I was like, really? Like, and not like his heart's not in it, but I just know how busy you are, how full your plate can be,
Yeah,
because you're in high demand. A lot of people want your time and attention, so I don't take that lightly. So thank you so much.
you
Um,
bet, man.
can we talk a little bit about what you see coming down the road for that? I'm using
Mhm.
this as of course an invite for people who are not in our community to see what we're up to, but I'd also
Mhm.
love for the guys who are in our community listening to this to know what's in front of them. But and you don't have to go through each call if you don't want to, or you don't have to give as many. You don't have to give a grand explanation with specific details. But I'm curious for you, man. Like, how are you feeling about this? What are you
Mm.
excited about? What are some of the themes that we're digging into? Just free flow. Any thoughts that you have about what's coming up?
Yeah, I mean, well, one of the things I would say, getting to be on this side of it for the first time is, I mean, I know like when brands and organizations, even our school board sends out a poll, like a survey, like I don't take it because I don't expect the data to be used. I think it's just
Mm,
going to be a waste of time. They're okay, they're appeasing me. You know, we want your feedback, but they're going to do what they want to do. In front row dads, that's not true. In front row dads, the pillar polls like matter. Like behind the scenes, they take into consideration what you've said you want, and then the pillar is tailored to what you're wanting. So I just think I'm really excited about that. I think guys who took the poll are going to get exactly what they asked for when they took it, and I'd encourage everybody to take those polls going forward because your feedback is taken very seriously. So I'm excited for that. I think it's going to be meaningful and valuable. We have here's a I'm just gonna like you said I'm just gonna think out loud. I remember in looking at the poll results, there was one item about uh, affection in the relationship, like emotional affection, physical affection, and the desire to talk more about emotional connection than physical connection came up for our dads. And I was
yeah.
like, is there any other male community on the planet that wants to talk more about emotional connection than physical connection? And I think it's because our guys are wise enough to know that emotional connection is the foundation of healthy and
Yes.
rewarding physical connection in
Yes.
relationships, right?
Yeah. Big time.
It's not that one's better than the other. It's that one has to come first if the other's really going to thrive. Um, and I think another theme from the pillar is going to be a similar sort of yin and yang between being energy and doing energy. I'm going to do a deep dive call on those two concepts. Doing energy being all of our entrepreneurial spirit of go, do, achieve, impact, change, transform, and being energy being our capacity to be fully here without trying to change the moment at all.
Yeah.
And, and that both of those are such essential energies to be showing up with in life. But if you get them out of order in a lot of situations, like it can be pretty disastrous. Oftentimes, our wisest doing flows from a really steady initial being. And so we're going to talk about that. We're talking about how that can be applied to coming home from like a front row dads retreat, fired up with doing energy. And
Yes.
if you lead with that, like that's not going to go well. And so I'm excited about that. I'll tell you personally, this is another one of those wonderful perks of being in the front row dads community. After being in Park City with Adam Stock last year, he called me up after the retreat and said, I mean, in his nice way, like, I think you got financial issues and I'd love to have a conversation with you. And one conversation, I was like, we're switching our wealth manager. We're done with the guy we've been working with. We switched over to Adam. We spent all year with one of his colleagues, my wife and I. And for the first time in our marriage, our finances is a point of connection and closeness rather than
Oh yeah.
division. Working with a wealth manager, like that's
Mm.
insane to me. He's got such an so Adam's going to come in for a call and talk about how you can really learn your partner's financial DNA, respect it, and
Wow, that's so great.
incorporate it in, yeah, incorporate it into your vision for what you're going to do as a couple, what your life's going to look like, and how you yeah, obviously how you can both collaborate with your financial DNA. So like all sorts of exciting stuff. You can I get really excited about what we're developing and what it's going to look like.
That's really cool. I was on a call earlier this morning, actually, with Matt Sprang, who's a front row dad who also
Yeah.
designs and facilitates these events, or designs and facilitates our summit, which is it's several hours of a deep dive that we take. So for anybody listening, like once every 8 weeks, we do this deep dive, and we call it the summit, the online summit, and we usually have some type of guest that comes in and we'll teach, unveil, workshop through some big subject matter, and then the guys can talk about it. Hey, what did that mean to us? How does that relate to my own life? Let me think about this for a minute and let me talk about it with these other guys and make a plan so that we walk away from that event having processed and with an action plan of, hey, which are the lead domino activities in my life? So I'm thrilled about that event that we have coming up. Is that next week? Think that's
The summit is tomorrow.
oh tomorrow. Yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
tomorrow. God, as I
Yeah.
record, it's so funny. Let me tell you why I'm so
uh,
happy that I just jacked that up. Can I tell you, Kelly, why that I'm
sure,
thrilled to have
yes,
just messed that up?
uh,
It is such a testament to the fact that
mm,
I'm not micromanaging this anymore,
hmm,
and
yeah.
that the front row dads community is growing in such a way that yeah, that things are happening like right now. By the way, this is also cool. Right now, I'm looking at my calendar. There is a band training call happening right now
This moment, that's
in
right.
this moment that I'm not running.
Yeah.
And bands, for everybody, again, is our small groups. So 4 to 8 guys that meet regularly to go deep, have meaningful conversation, the type of conversations that most men and fathers will not ever have in their lives. So we create a space for them to get real and
Hmm.
talk about the things that make a difference. Dude, tomorrow, the Thriving Fair Summit is tomorrow. That's so awesome. Jason Gaddis is
Yes.
going to be there.
Yeah.
So obviously, as we release this, it'll be too late for people to go to that event, but you'll at least know. And for the guys that are in the community that can go listen to that recording, Jason Gaddis is a great resource on repair. That's going to be the subject matter for tomorrow, I know, in his
And so
workshop.
people, yeah, so people can anchor themselves in like how a pillar works. That summit sort of kicks off the pillar.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
right.
you've got 5 weeks worth of deep dive calls following that over the course of the next 2 months, as well as other things going on. So yeah, that'll be kicking us off. And then we'll get into all these deep dive content calls in the coming weeks. And each one of them you can dip into, even if you haven't been at the summit, and just enjoy the heck out of it.
Yeah. There's just resources available. I think that's the thing. I'd like to have things available to me in the moments that I need them. And guys can
Hmm.
kind of cherry pick which ones they have energy around. Some guys come to all of
Hmm.
them, some guys pick one of them, but they're there. And I love what we're up to, man. I love what we're and I can say this confidently, man, what we're co-creating, what we're building together. And I love that our guys lean into your work and they're raving fans. And I'm so grateful that you're leaning into the front row dad community. It feels like the best example of a win-win scenario. And I love it. It feels like what community should be. And I love what we've got. So love you, man. Thank you so
I'm
much.
love you too. When I find a place that feels like home, I like to pour into it. So I'm happy to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, this does feel like home in many ways. Um, hey, what's something that we didn't say that you'd like to say to wrap us up, if anything? And if we've said it all, then I feel good of where we are. But if there's anything else that you wanted to bring up, anything you want to explore, share with the men, dude, I'm all
Mm.
ears.
Oh man. um, I'm drawing a blank. Yeah. I've got I've got three things that come to mind, and they all need another hour.
Yes.
I'll just tell you the one. I'm in Costa Rica. Um, I'll tell you. I'm going to tell you. I'll just tell you this. Um, at the retreat in the Keys, I got uh, paired up with someone. I don't know that I totally have permission to share this publicly, so I'll just say someone who, in our first paired interview, basically told me that if you want to understand love, you have to understand pain and suffering. That those two are intricately intertwined. And um, I came out of, and then I went into breath work the next morning, and had this awareness that I feel a deep, deep calling to help people unburden themselves of the pain that they've been carrying around for a long time. I sometimes just think of it in my head as the great sadness that set in childhood in one form or another. Usually, the sadness that comes with a sense of separation from our people. And then I'm in Costa Rica giving a keynote talk last week, and I start to listen to pick up an old Ram Dass book, Becoming Nobody, and I'm listening to it, and his message is the same thing, that the question every human being has to answer is that, can you keep your heart open in hell? Can you keep your heart open in hell? Because if not, you're not free. You just are rearranging chairs on the Titanic, trying to make sure that you don't experience the thing that you most fear. And and so, like, I uh, my encouragement to guys listening in is no matter what you're going through, if it feels like hell, the task is still the same, to figure out how to keep your heart open to it.
Mhm.
And I should clarify that keeping your heart open could mean a lot of things. It doesn't necessarily mean warm and fuzzy feelings. It doesn't mean you stick out the thing that you're doing. When I had a moment with my practice several years ago, where I was feeling my heart close in the middle of an interaction with an employee, and I opened it back up, and the thought that sort of bubbled up from the bottom of my heart was, let it die, let this thing go, shut it down, close it down, right? So we get to be surprised by what surfaces for us when we open our hearts. We don't have any predetermined agenda about what it's going to be. But when we can do that in the midst of the hardest things, what we discover is that the hardest thing about the hardest things is that we're closing our heart to them.
Yeah.
And that if we don't close our heart to it, we can handle it. So that would be my encouragement. If you're going through something hard, the task is still the same. Open your heart to it and learn you can handle it.
Thanks, Kelly. That's perfect. Guys, something I do occasionally when it feels right in the moment, and it feels right now, is this offer as a way to honor Kelly for being my guest today on the show, and a way to honor you all, the listeners of this podcast. Kelly has written, I mentioned already, some killer books. So hanging on the wall behind him right now, True Companions is one, The Unhiding of Elijah Campbell, and Lovable. I've read all three. I can't tell you that I have a favorite. They're all awesome, and they were perfect right at the moment when I read them. It was on time
It's awesome.
and in the moment, right when I wanted them, right when I needed them. If you feel appreciative of this show, you've never written a review before, go to any platform where you can write a review, Spotify, Apple, wherever. Write a review, screenshot it, email our team, support@frontrowdads.com, and tell me which book you want of Kelly's. I will go buy it for you. I will mail it to you, and I want to support Kelly. I want to support you, the listener, and I want to build a bridge there and honor this conversation in that way. So that deal will stand for all of 2024 for anybody, and that would be, I think we can only ship in the US the way we're set up to do this. So in the US, we'll send you a book. For my international listeners, hey, I don't know, send me a message. Maybe I can send you a Kindle version of it or something. I'd love to figure out a way that I could deliver it to you easily. But Kelly, thank you, man. This has been, as it always is, really an enjoyable conversation. Thanks for coming to this hour that we got together with an open heart. And when you get a chance, please tell the other Kelly that it was so good to hang with her when you guys were in Austin, and we did that workshop, and then we went to a concert, and I was just we were able to do the work together, but we were able to like hang and play a little bit together and just enjoy life together. I crave more of that, man. So I'm going to call that in. I'm going to hope that we can do more of those types of days and experiences. Yeah. Thank you again, brother.
Yeah, she will look forward to the next chance she gets to be in a room with you guys for sure. She enjoyed it. Thank you for having me here, and thanks for sending the book to somebody. Appreciate that, man.
All right. Lots of love. Oh, hey, one more thing. Where do we send them? For as one place?
Oh, yeah, you can go to drkellyflanagan.substack.com,
There you go.
drkellyflanagan.substack.com to go to humaning, and then from there you can find all the things.
Yeah. And if you guys need help, support at frontrowdads.com. We'll point you to Kelly or whatever you need. All right. See you guys.